victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold him!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to discuss Magic Round and everything around for the Parramatta Eels and the wider NRLs, my good mate, Sixties, aka the big fella, and the mysteries and spookiness of round 13. That's still a couple of weeks away, Craig. That's on the other side of the line for the Parramatta Eels, but I'd argue that round 11 is far scarier for the Parramatta Eels. The bad juju, the black magic, the voodoo, it's out there right now. The Melbourne Storm in Magic Round, Peter Goff as the main official. As I said in my team list post, Craig, the Eels need to break out the bandolier of salt pouches, start burning the sage, fill up their super soakers of holy water, start smelting some silver weaponry, and maybe brush up on their Latin. Anything and everything to break a curse this week, because the Eels have it stacked up against them, mate.
John, I had Peter Goff's name nowhere on that run sheet, and you've gone for the juju.
Straight away. Look, chat's been all over it anyway. They've been commiserating and unfortunately having to spread the bad gospel of Peter Goff out there right now. And yes, it's look, there's no way to spin it as positive, Craig. All I can say is, I was saying in chat to Philly, I think it was, that maybe, just maybe, we're technically due under old mate Peter Goff. It's been a run of some ugly losses. Maybe we're due for a win under his stewardship.
We can only hope, John. Surely the rugby league gods, the NRL universe, something has to come back to us when we get Peter Goff. It's, what are we, 10 from 31 or something like that at the moment? It's not good, whatever it is. But yes, it's not good, whatever it is.
We are 47 games played, 18 and 28 for a win rate of 38.3%, which is not our historical worst, but for the
No, that's not right. No.
I'm going off what Rugby League Project has updated here. It's 18 and 28 according to their metrics.
18. Now. We haven't won 18 games under Peter Goff. We're only that's how many we've lost under him.
Where's he gone? I was scrolling back up to check something there. Peter Goff, 47 games, 18 wins, 28 losses and a draw, apparently, according to Rugby League Project. So I'm not sure if there was some older data that, they're counting touch judge games too.
Oh, no.
I need to see the primary official stuff here. I don't care about him being a secondary or tertiary official. Yeah, so that would explain how he's padded out the win stats for us, Craig. Because if we go through and do the actual win losses in the direct stewardship of his whistle, it would be a far less pretty picture. So it's I dare say it dips below 30% win rate, which is insane because you think about the amount of games, 47 games. It goes back to 30 something when you count out those secondary touch judge roles, but still statistically among the referees that have had 30 or more games, that's got to be among the worst. I can see in the 40s for some referees here. Who else? Darcy Lawler, by the way, 34.4% win rate under him, and that was all as a referee. So he is in the same capacity as a referee from the NSW RFL in the 40s through to the 60s. That's the sort of rarefied company that we've got with Peter Goff here. Old mate Darcy Lawler.
Yeah, and we don't want to dive too deep into Darcy Lawler. His tales around him are legendary. But John, before we get on with things, just our usual shout outs to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And we're a few weeks where we're not there, John, because the home games aren't happening for the Eels at the moment. This is a home game, the Magic Round, and mind you, I think we go back to we will move forward to round 13 being the Eels' official Magic round when the players come back. But yes, this is a home game. It's what's happened now that we don't have Darwin. We're giving a home game to Magic round because we haven't gone out to a regional area. So anyway, and of course, no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe. Can I also mention a couple of other things? First of all, if you haven't as yet listened to the season review podcast and NRLW sneak peek preview with our special guest, Steve Georgalis, please do that, because the insights that you get about the Eels Academy and the development of players towards senior grades, it's fantastic. A lot of details too, of course, about the Tarsha Gale Cup Grand Final win. So we go in depth with that, but of course we review each of the 4 Eels Academy teams. Don't miss it. We are able to provide that for you because we are the most trusted Eels podcast. So stick with us. Have a listen to that podcast. You won't regret listening to it. And John, the other thing I wanted to mention as well, we celebrate the people that dug the well that we all drink from these days. I had the pleasure of spending a bit of time after training this week with Kevin Wise, and Kevin had a lot to do with the Eels pathways and also in education and welfare. He was the originator of the Parramatta House. I'm fortunate. Kevin sits behind us at the stadium with his season tickets. So I get to speak to Kevin all the time. Every time I get the chance to speak to Kevin, I feel that much more informed and smarter about the Eels and our history and some of the fine work that's gone into the players both yesterday and today. So my thanks to Kevin for spending that time with me. Really enjoyed it, Kevin. And John, apart from that, hit the stinger.
News team, assemble!
I feel like we should be doing some running or, like coming in ready to assemble. We need to have some action happening. Is it a case of striking a pose?
That might be round 13 when the Avengers all get back from the injury award for the Parramatta Eels.
John, let's launch into the news that we were talking about, first of all, as a rumour on the podcast last week, and that was Harrison Edwards. And we were able to break the news that he'd signed with the Eels first thing on Wednesday morning through one of our sources. That had nothing, and I want to reiterate to people, if I ever catch whisper of something around the Eels club, we don't get into breaking that news whatsoever. But we had very strong confirmation that Harrison Edwards had signed from the Cowboys to the Eels on Saturday, that he'd be given the official release to come and join Parramatta. So we went with being able to break that. Sorry, we didn't get the news on Saturday. We were told that had all transpired on Saturday. So we were able to break that news on Wednesday. He wasn't part of training last week. He has been training this week. People would have seen on Eels media that Harrison has started his journey now with the Parramatta Eels. I don't expect that he's going to be a late inclusion this week. My expectation would be that he'd probably play New South Wales Cup, but who knows? There could be a late change because he's been named in the extended list. I would think he needs to learn a few of the calls, the systems, the shapes, all that sort of stuff. It's a hard thing to come in and so early.
As it stands, Queensland Origin legend TBA does occupy the lock role in the New South Wales Cup for the Parramatta Eels, so wouldn't be surprised to see Harrison Edwards dropping back post-Magic round on Saturday for the Eels to play on Sunday.
Yes, I think that's my expectation too. You've just mentioned the the team list that's there. Do we have an injury list, John?
We do.
We
do have an updated finally. It came out closer to 5 o'clock than 4, but it's got additions, it's got subtractions. Some of it is curiously players that aren't on the injury list or in a team list. So make of that what you will. But yeah, updated team list. Of course, the long-term ones: Jermaine Hopgood, Matt Doorey gone for the season with ACLs for both of those players. We're still waiting for a Bailey Simonson diagnosis on an ankle. He has TBC on a potential return date.
I think there was something that came out last week that actually put him out for the season. So this one might have.
The latest update is still TBC. Let me just double check that. I don't want to, because when I was doing my Excel spreadsheet for the import there, where is the injury report gone? He is TBC still on the latest report. Likewise, unfortunately for Will Penasini, Craig, the osteitis pubis, the ongoing sort of groin pelvic injury of Will Penasini, still has not been given some kind of official timeline. I know that if you read NRL Physio, he's mentioned that it's a lot of pain management, regardless of how good or bad the outcome is. And obviously, worst case scenario can be a fairly long layoff. But in general, it tends to be. What was there were a couple of players in the NRL that maybe might have had between 2 weeks to 6 weeks in recent times, and it's just about pain management. And unfortunately for Will, still not on the team sheet, but on the injury report. And he's joined by his younger brother, Richie Penasini, Craig, who's had a reoccurrence of the bone bruise, and they kept him out for a few rounds in recent weeks. And he's been put back to a round 17 return. So it's a pretty hefty layoff here for young Richie Penasini. And again, some horrible luck for him. Speaking of horrible luck, Jake Tungor, who just come back from a heavy concussion due to a really nasty high shot in the game against the Panthers, I think it was. And he played a couple of rounds and then got another high shot. And this one has made a mess of his jaw. He's out to round 17. So luckless pair there in Tungor and Penasini. And Riley Smith, not a surprise here, maybe he's been downgraded to a round 13 return. Initially was around 11 to 12. But given that it's a sternum injury and the bye's right there next week, I think that was pretty much an expected outcome. Ditto for Sam Tuavaiti, who's been around 13 on a round 15 timeline for a few weeks now. But there was some images and footage of him running freely at training alongside some of the other Eels that aren't on this list in Katonga and Iongi, but he is not playing this week. So they're going to play it safe with Sam, give him the extra 2 weeks rest. That's your injury report right there. As you might have noticed, no Isaiah Iongi with his syndesmosis injury. I don't know if that's just an oversight because he's not in any team list. But Kitione Katonga with his MCL, also not in the team sheet, but he does feature not in the injury report, but he does feature on a team sheet. Yes,
so you're about to read him out with one of the teams.
Oh, and no look at Fletcher, by the way, too. But the Flegg are not playing this week, so.
Yeah. So you're right. The club has put out images of some of those fellas training out on the field. So they've moved past a lot of the rehab program and are into, I guess, engaging in that return to play through being involved in some of the training that goes on with the NRL team rather than just training separately. They're back and engaged in less contact work, but a little bit of scrimmage play there. So can you please take us through the team lists, John?
Yeah, so he jumped straight into the NRL team sheet, taking on the Melbourne Storm in round 11, Magic Round up in Suncorp. Eels play this one primetime Saturday, so it's a day late than what we saw last week in round 10, but in the primetime slot this week, which means 7:45 p.m. Usually it is a 7:30 p.m. kickoff, but I think with the all the teams playing out of the same venue, Craig, they give themselves an extra 15 minutes here to help facilitate all the logistical transfers between the various squads playing on Saturday. And the Eels, it's a little surprise. I know there were some players off the injury report here, but given that they won last week in pretty psychotic circumstances against the Cowboys, Coach Jason Riles is opting for the same top 19. There are some changes on the extended roster, so we'll go quickly through it. Fullback is Joash Papali, Brian Kelly and Josh Adokar on the wings. Jordan Samrani, player of the match, I think, by consensus in the TCT 3-2-1 on the live stream. He's at right centre, while Sean Russell is at left centre. In the halves, Ronald Volkman and Mitchell Moses. And obviously Mitch also with the C next to his name. In the front row is Luca Moretti, Talon De Silva, and Junior Barlaw. Again, looks like they're going to lean on Talon for 80 minutes in this game, assuming that everything goes to plan. On the edges, it'll be Kelma Tuolangi and Jack Williams. Jack DeBellin locks out the scrum. On the interchange, it's Dylan Walker, Saxon Pryke, Tony Mattielli, who probably had the breakout game of his young career and hoping to back that up this week, alongside Charlie Goma, Upper Twiddle, and Tiankan Brown. Extend the roster. New Eel Harrison Edwards leads the way with jersey 20. Araz Namva will be the backline utility option. And then returning from a one-game suspension for a hip drop tackle against the New Zealand Warriors 2 weeks ago in reserve grade, it's Jonah Pezzett with the 22 on his back.
Yeah, so no real surprise there, John. I think the telling point is going to come in round 13 when Jason Riles has some decisions to make around the returning players and the players that have been filling their roles in the meantime. So as things stand, it looks like he's opting for Volkman ahead of Pezzett, with Pezzett now available to play. And he was 2 weeks ago, and we expected that he might play a game in New South Wales Cup just to get back into the swing of things. He was then suspended last week. So this is his second return, and Volkman, as it appears, has held on to his spot. Apart from that, John, I don't think there's really anything to talk about because...
Well, like you sort of intimated, Craig, there was the consideration that they might rush Harrison Edwards onto the six-man optional bench, but and that could still be a possibility. He's on the extended roster here, so he could be brought into the game during cutdowns, brought into the team list during cutdowns. But like you sort of said earlier, I think the common sense process here would be to bring him in for a cup, give him a game or two, understand Parramatta signals and calls, and get used to his playing roster around him. And so that probably is the most logical outcome. And again, I think when you look at what Tony Mattielli did last week, what Saxon Pryke has done weeks before that, in terms of the forwards there, at least on the bench, obviously there's a utility value of Harrison Edwards, but in terms of the forwards, I think Riles is liking what he's seeing from some of his young players, and he even gave Saxon a shout out in his media call before the was it the Thursday media call, I think, Craig, when he was up in Townsville, but before the game day, and he said that he'd been a bit surprised by Saxon Pryke. He'd come on more than they thought in first grade. So these young guys, they're taking their opportunities right now, and that might mean that Harrison Edwards gets a week or two, or at least one game, given that there's a bye, to get acquainted with other players on the roster in reserve grade.
Yeah, and of course we welcome Harrison Edwards to the club, and I'd encourage everyone else to. There was a little bit of mixed reaction to his acquisition, but
look, and we weren't exactly.
I don't think the Eels didn't parade Harrison.
They were quite up front, saying that it feels quite literally saying that we're short on players right now. He's a valuable signing with utility value, and even in our own analysis, Craig, we weren't trying to spin it as this incredible pickup. It is a handy pickup. He's a solid back rower that gives you the tertiary depth at hooker that this roster really needed. And again, the duration of the contract is right where it needed to be. My concern was always going to be, you're going to clog up your pathways, clog up your cap by signing a multi-year deal with someone like Harrison Edwards, who was a good role player, a good big part player. But the club didn't do that. They went out and gave him the 1.5-year deal, helps him bridge towards other options in 2027 and beyond, and doesn't really clog up the pathways.
Yeah, exactly. John, can you run through the New South Wales Cup team list? Because, yes, there's some interesting things to discuss there.
Yes, yeah. Beyond, like I said, the Queensland origin legend that is TBA at lock forward. The Eels do have a few changes here. Not the fullback, though. Brad Avery with the one on his back again. He's been a staple there for the Eels this year. On the wings, Muhammad Al-Madeen, one of the better players I thought for the Eels, in a pretty tough loss to the North Sydney Bears, Craig. They had massive possession splits against them. I thought they actually fought pretty hard, and the 46-10 scoreline probably wasn't reflective of their efforts, but Moe Al-Madeen having a good game there on the wing. Opposite flank, great to see. Devonta Vavela's clear concussion protocols. He'll go down that right sideline with Moe on the left. Araz Namva and Arpa Twaddle in the centres. So Arpa now showing some more positional versatility for the Eels this year. He goes into the centres after starting at halfback last week. In the halfback role, it is Jonah Pezzett. He'll partner Lorenzo Talatayuna at number 6. Front row is Tiankan Brown, Cruz Natili-Schmidt, and Tyrese Lakini. He bumps in from lock forward to starting prop. I don't think he's going to change his role too much, though. On the edges, Josiah Finau to be very glad to be back his preferred position of back row after having to moonlight at centre against the Bears. And he's joined on the opposite flank by Kitione Katonga. So a good pair of back rowers there. Again, TBA at lock 4. We think it's going to be Harrison Edwards, but again, that's a guess, not any sort of inside mail there. Then on the bench, we have Trace Beattie, Zach Visconti, Ryder Talangi, and Jordan Hill. In this game, while Magic Round kicks off in Brisbane on Friday, because there's Women's Origin on Thursday, you got the Festival of Footy across the weekend at North Sydney Oval. And the Eels play this one Sunday, 3 o'clock p.m, taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons.
Yes, I guess that's their version of Magic Round.
That is their version of Magic Round. Yes, correct.
Is that Festival of Footy part of the beer, food?
It plays alongside the beer, wine, and food festival, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. It's a good event. Normally attracts quite a crowd, and hopefully they get a good crowd at North Sydney Oval for the event. It's not my favourite ground to watch rugby league.
No,
at John.
Old cricket oval. It's
historic. We can use words like historic, picturesque, all that sort of thing. But the
difference is no one's trying to spin it as the ninth wonder of the world here, and that's
no. I must say I've been to North Sydney Oval quite a few times. Certainly back in the day, watching the Eels take on the Bears in first grade, but I've also gone with lower grade and junior reps to watch the Eels and the Bears at North Sydney Oval. As I said, a little bit of history, strange angles that the seating is at, with the stands around the ground, more akin to cricket probably than rugby league. But as I said, it should be a good day out there. I would expect they would get a crowd of maybe around 5,000-6,000 for the Food and Footy Festival. So a bit of fun there. John, just with regard, I'm surprised a little bit with Gideon being selected at New South Wales Cup level for a game. What's your take on that?
I was thinking about that one too, mate, because they're pretty loath to expose players to Cup when they don't need to, especially if it's a frontline player. Gideon's been out for a few weeks now, and I think the rationalisation would be, assuming that he does play and there isn't a late change that could make this a moot point. But I would guess that when you factor in when he got hurt, because that is going back, how many games ago was that for Gideon? He's been out for a while now. It's been over a month pretty comfortably. And you factor in that we've got a bye coming up, which means another 2 weeks to the next game. There'd probably be a bit of a concern about a lack of match fitness. And he would have been working hard to be fit, but with an MCL, he would have had some restrictions on his ability to run and do short area agility and that kind of fitness related drills. So I guess that they just want to get. He might even do what we've seen with Lorenzo in recent weeks, when due to his role as part of the Eels 6-man optional bench, he only played 40 minutes. So they might throw him in there for 40 minutes and just put him on ice, regardless of how the game's faring, and just want to get some minutes and meters into him, but then not expose him to any sort of fatigue-related injuries towards the back end of the game.
Yep. And now we've got the third team list, which also the team will be playing on Sunday, but at Kellyville. So can you run through the Jersey Flegg?
The Jersey Flegg? There is no Jersey Flegg, isn't there? It's a global buy.
Isn't there a Jersey Flegg game this week?
It's a global buy, isn't it?
Global buy. Okay, I might have been looking at last week's draw.
There is no round 11.
My apologies.
We skipped the round 12. I don't know why. Chris might be able to enlighten us in chat. I'm not sure why there is a global buy. It might just be because of the way their competition is structured. There's not enough teams or games, but they get a global buy, and then we'll resume next week. But the Eels are one of 6 teams for buy next week, so it's actually quite a long break for the Jersey Flegg boys, which is interesting because there's not really any push-ups in terms of sort of promotions from Flegg right now this week. I guess it could be a consideration for next week though. I know I saw Josh in chat asking that surely Cam Bamber will be one of those players that is very close right now, and I agree. Cameron's and they're probably going to be a little bit careful of not trying to burn him out because he's played a lot of football already, and he's still very much growing into that frame of his, and I think he's going to fill out very nicely and be a well-proportioned, athletic backline option for the Eels. But he is a bit rangy right now. But yeah, you've got a few guys in there. I mean, Louis obviously played a bit of New South Wales Cup already. They've got how far do they push someone like Jackson Coyner, Craig? He might be a player that comes into consideration next week, I guess.
Yeah.
The Eels have a bye in Cup next week as well. So they do have a bye in Cup next week, right? Let me just double check that. This might just be a really awkward. We got nothing next week. There's nothing. There's no Jersey Flegg Cup or NRL. So yeah, I guess.
I was just having a look through the draw, and I was having a look through the draw and trying to see how on earth did I see a Sunday game, and it must have been that the
is that
the draw jumped in
to round 26.
Yeah, could have.
Yes, it defaults around 26 against the Sharks.
Yes.
The match day portal on the draw section of newsouthwalersrugby.com doesn't like the fact that there's no round 11 listed on the schedule. And that's why I had to do a double take when I was looking this afternoon. I was like, wait, what? Why is it round 26?
Yeah, I didn't even look at the round 26. I've just opened it up to Jersey Flegg, expecting it to be this week. That's what it is, isn't it? It's the 2 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yes,
for round 26.
2 o'clock against the Sharks. Yeah, and Chris in chat just
tell my brother not to turn up down there. He's been getting out to Kellyville for the lower grade games. I have to message him.
Don't do that to him. Yeah.
No, don't plan on going this week.
Chris confirming in chat, by the way, due to a combination of that festival football and also the junior representative, but not junior reps, but the city versus country stuff, causing a stoppage or a halt for the Jersey Flegg. So there's your mitigating circumstances for the round 11 global bye.
Yes, they've got both the boys and the girls, city versus country, different age groups too, because the boys are 16s and 18s, the girls are 17s and 19s. So, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, just some final takes on last week's games, John. We've got the miracle win. Well, I don't know if miracle's the right word, but it was the win that never looked like happening throughout the game that still fell our way against the Cowboys. There was that game that you started to speak about a little bit when it came to the possession split against the North Sydney Bears in New South Wales Cup, which was a 50-10 loss in that. And then there was a 50-0 win to the Jersey Flegg against the Fiji Silktails as well. So let's go to the NRL to start off with. What's your final thoughts on that Eels win over the Cowboys?
Yeah, look, again, no sugarcoating here. It was a deeply flawed victory where on both sides, defense was incredibly optional and very flimsy. And I got to imagine that both Todd Payton and Jason Ryles would not be happy what they saw in terms of defense. And again, Ryles mentioned in his presser, Craig, that he feels that a lot of the flaws are still on decisions, communication, and on an individual level rather than a systemic level. But in saying that, and again, injuries are a huge factor here. And yes, the turf was a bit of a joke there, more of an ice rink than a football field. It's been a few weeks now, and the Eels really need to start tidying that up. But as much as you can legitimately gripe about the defense, you can't help but admire the resilience, because they were in a hole multiple times in that game, and they found a way. And as the game got longer and longer and harder, it was the Eels that had the answers and not the Cowboys. And we saw Mitchell Moses rise to the top. I know that fans have been quite critical of Mitch this year, and again, not without reason. I'm not saying that people are wrong in their criticisms of Mitch this year, but when the game needed a halfback to step up, he stood up. And I know he didn't put the Eels in front by 2 points off the sideline. He narrowly missed. But as I joked with, I said it to you, mate, but I joked with my family saying, I tell you what, maybe we won the game by not winning the game, because the Cowboys don't go short. They play for golden point from there. And the Eels obviously go on to win the game with the boot of Mitchell Moses from there. But as flawed as it was, we saw some great performances. Obviously, we had to lean on Talon Silva heavily. Yes, he missed 8 tackles. But he was throwing himself at Jason Taumalolo and the other forwards all day. Had a couple of brilliant attacking plays. Jordan Samarani, obviously outstanding at right centre. I was hugely impressed with Tony Mattielli for all the reasons why I mentioned other players could be criticised. You go look at his stats, Craig. 10 carries, 119 metres. We'll round up to 120 metres. Couple of tackle busts. But 20 tackles, 0 missed, 0 ineffective. There are only a handful of players that had 0 missed and 0 ineffective tackles in that game. And only 2 of them were over 20 tackles. And it was Tony Mattielli and I think Cohen Hess on the other side of the docket were the only 2 players that launched a clean sheet in defence in that sort of capacity. So, yeah, a lot of really good efforts across the park. Yes, it was a flawed win, but I tell you what, in this competition, in the mania that we have going around right now, and in many ways this game was peak PVL ball, where the defence was just non-existent because of runs of possession and tropical conditions obviously not helping there. The fact that the Eels found a way is important, and hopefully they can build on it. There was another thing I was going to mention. Now I'm having an absolute brain fade. But yeah, look, we got away without any major injuries. Obviously, naming the same 19 players again. Really, really happy, mate. And again, you go back to the Easter Monday game where the Eels narrowly lost it was controversial circumstances. We're 4-6 right now. We're that far away from being 5-5. And if you were 5-5, I mean 4-6 isn't that bad, but if you were 5-5. after everything we've been through, after all the injuries, all the drama, all the on-field stuff that's happened with the referees and all the other stuff. 5-5 would be an incredible place to be at, and we're not that far off it right now. So Eels got a ton of improvement to do across the park, especially in defence, but at least they've got some foundations here to work on one side of the ball, at least right now.
Just on the defence, stick with us as we go into the NRL side of the news, because I want to talk about the stats that are being put out around defence in the NRL at the moment and points conceded, because it's well worth a discussion. The Eels, there's been talk about the Eels not being fit enough or what have you. My take on the fitness of the team is that I can tell you that from the pre-season, the Eels did a lot more of traditional conditioning this year than what they did last year. So they were looking to mix it up, bring in a little bit more. There was players that were recording PBs for Broncos run tests, that sort of measurement that's used to decide what a player's fitness is like. But what we saw with the Eels finishing better than the Cowboys, I think, relates to what we've seen all season. When the Eels have had poor completions, they've put themselves under pressure. They've had to do more defence. If you have to do more defence, you're going to become more fatigued. You're going to subject yourself to more penalties, more six-again calls. In this game, the Eels completed at 91%, which meant they were having to do less work. It meant that they were able to finish the stronger. And there's a lot to be said about then. If you're completing at 91%, you're having a greater say in your own destiny. You're not giving the ref an opportunity to become involved. Now, we had Liam Kennedy officiate a game where he basically let the players decide. There were only, until that final penalty that came in the extra time, the golden point where Mitch Moses had his leg taken out from underneath him, there were 3 penalties in the game. And I think the 6-again count was, the set restart count was also quite low. So the players were in control of that game. And when the Eels have had a chance to be in those sorts of games, then they've done quite well for themselves.
Possession more than ever is king, Craig. I mean, we mentioned in the podcast, look at Manly's run and look at their possession splits and where they've struggled or had close games and where they've dominated. It's all tied to possession right now.
Yeah. So the way I saw the game was that we were able to stay in the contest on the scoreboard. And when the time came to be able to finish strongly, it fitted in with what the workload that we'd been asked to do through the game, which was less than what the Cowboys' workload was. We finished the stronger, and fortunately, we got the 2 points for the for the victory. And as you said, John, there's the table's interesting because there are teams sitting above us on the ladder that have the same number of wins, but they've had a bye. So they've nudged ahead of the Eels. If you look at, we've cruelled ourselves in some games
no doubt,
where we should have been competing. I would argue that we were cruelled by the referee against the Tigers. Some might say the luck came back our way a little bit in this one and made up for that game against the Tigers. However you'd like to talk about the rugby league gods or match officials, whatever, I was just glad that it fell our way in this one because we needed it badly. So hopefully there's a lot that the players take out of it in terms of a bit of a bump in confidence, in self-belief, in belief in the players next to them. They're the intangibles that you need to take into a game, into each game each week. So we need to see it as well against the Storm this week. This is the chance for a redemption. Last year, the Eels performed much better the second time they took on the Storm, but that game was at Combank Stadium. And from memory, what was it? Was it a 6 or 8 point loss? It was close throughout the game. I think it was a Thursday night game. last year, that one, John, but certainly wasn't the thrashing that was there in round one in 2025. Likewise, we're coming off the thrashing against the Storm in the first round. The Storm have found a little bit of confidence from their victory over the Tigers, but we'll worry all about previewing the ifs and what might be.
If buts and wins on Thursday, I dare say.
In our preview podcast. John, that New South Wales Cup game, a 50-10 loss to the Bears, a Bears team that has no affiliation to an NRL team. Watching the game live.
Excuse me, 46-10. They didn't get 50. Come on.
Oh, sorry. 46-10. Watching the game live, I had quite a lot of respect for the Bears. They looked like a well-coached team. They look like a team that spend a lot of time together. They don't have I would imagine that they've been able to have some stability in their team selections because they don't have players being called up to NRL or dropping back down from NRL. Combinations would be well developed within the team. And although they don't have stars, I tell you what, John, they had some players there who I think have done some NRL pre-seasons. Their fullback was he was a difficult commodity to try to get hold of.
Yeah, what was his name? It was Jake Toby. There you go. Yeah,
I think he might have had a background at Manly off the top of my head in lower grade there.
Started at Penrith apparently. There you go. Penrith.
Yeah.
What about before that? Penrith Workers, which is Manly, and then for a couple of years, and then in the Bears for the last 2 and a bit years. So yeah, that's his. I think
their centre gave a lot of trouble. We expected Jaden Yates to be that hard worker in the middle that he was when he was with the Parramatta Eels.
Yeah, look, we sort of anticipated, but a team lacking stars, but obviously very well drilled. A lot of continuity there for them, and they've been able to capitalise on that the way you'd want to see if you're a Bears fan. Eels found themselves in a bit of a tough position prior to kickoff, Craig, when it was confirmed that Josiah Funayuta will be playing at right centre. And I'm a massive rap on JFI, so are you, but it was a rough outing for him. And to be fair, he was a bit of a hiding and nothing there. He's not a centre, and he was forced by way of a couple of injuries there. Richie Penasini and obviously Devontae Bavella wasn't available either. That forced to play right centre, and the Bears went after him as they should. And they had a good bit of success down that edge. To be fair, they had success all over the park. I was saying to you, look, they got hiding in the second half, but it was 16-10 at half time. I thought they actually scrapped really nicely in the first half when they had. I don't think they had an even split of the ball in the first half, but they had a better split of the ball. In the second half, things spiraled all the way out to a 62% to 38% split of possession. Eels actually completed better than the Bears at 81% and 79%, but they were just being swarmed or drowned in a monsoonal wave of possession there, and the Bears were very good. And the Eels tried to hold on, but it really got away. And then if you look at the scoring splits from like the 55th minute onwards, like in that final quarter of play, they scored 4 tries, and that's where the game really got away. And it probably doesn't reflect how much they toiled the Parramatta Eels, but amidst all the disruptions and the injuries and then the possession splits, the Bears are too good, and you got to give credit to your opposition. They played some great football.
Yeah, they certainly camped in the Eels' half in that second half, and in particular that last 20 minutes. The call that I was a bit dirty on was I think one of the Bears players was penalised for the tackle on Jordan Miller, who then was...
it was a big shoulder to the head situation,
Yeah, and Jordan went to the head bin and didn't come back.
No.
The player didn't... He was penalised, but didn't have to go to the sin bin, even though Miller was out of the game. So I thought maybe that was a little bit rough, that call. I thought it could have been at least 10 minutes in the sin bin, at least, for that one. But apart from that, the Bears were just far too good. And I guess some of those players are competing for spots or putting their hand up for spots when the Perth Bears come in for maybe train and trial or some sort of second-tier part-time arrangement for the Bears, and they may have a pathway again to the NRL. through the North Sydney Bears. Then we also had the Jersey Flegg, which was a 50-0 win. I've got the 50 right on that one.
You've got that one right, yes.
And, John, this was an interesting one because the Fiji Silktails did not have the finesse and the combinations that were there for the Eels, and the Eels put the points on. But I tell you what, the Fiji team were very, very physical.
Yeah.
And they were physical for the entirety of the game. And what backed that up, I knew that it couldn't just be our imagination that it was as physical as we thought, because we had Lockie Kanikis came up into the stands after the game, and we said to him, congratulations on the win. And he goes, man, that game was ridiculously physical.
They're starting front rowers.
They just were hitting hard
Rubble
all
Miller
game.
and Raulini they really epitomised that physicality. They had some devastating carries and some big hits.
Yeah, and they, given that what the scoreline was, they didn't relent. They were still hitting as hard at the end of the game when their defence at times was, from a systems point of view, was shredded, but from an individual point of contact, it was spectacular at times, just the power that they were delivering. They're really going to be a work in progress that, if they can get the skill factor up and the sense of playing rugby league as a team, just that game sense, that game awareness, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in terms of their development of players. They have to start somewhere. They've been able to field national teams where they're getting experienced NRL players that are involved with different clubs, but this is developing their own talent now. In terms of the Eels, there was plenty to like about the performance, and you just know that there are players there like Cameron Bamblett who are destined for higher grades. And did you have any players you wanted to shout out individually, John?
Yeah, I mean, Cameron Bamblett obviously had a great game, Craig, playing at fullback. He's been in the front line the last couple of weeks, but then defaulted back to what I imagine his preferred position. That's the position he's probably played most of his football with as an Eel. Had a try early on and then racked up a number of try assists and had a couple taken away. There was a forward pass call to Joshua Mar Nelson that was probably borderline. I don't think it was an outrageously bad call by any means. And then later on, Mar Nelson also stepped on the touchline just before grounding the ball. So could have racked up all those TAs, but had to settle for only a handful of them. How will we ever survive? But I thought it was very good. And then, the other two that impressed me, one starting, one off the bench. Your guy, Stephen Nunn, first chance to start in the Jersey Flegg. I thought he was excellent. Huge work rate, great impact. He's always been for a young lad, a great impact prop forward. But I thought that his involvement throughout the game was excellent here against a very physical Fijian pack, Silktails pack. And then off the bench, he's missed the last couple of games. I'm not sure if injury's been a factor or just been the rotation of those SG ball players. But I thought Marcus Offenoa was very good. I liked what he brought from the interchange. And then didn't get to see a lot of him, but there was a couple of great runs from Mason Ong, another one of the young players brought into from the SG ball into Jersey Flegg. So, yeah, a lot of the young players getting their opportunities here. And they're really starting to make some impressions.
Yeah, I have to concur with your thoughts on Stephen Nunn. What people forget is that, or maybe they don't forget, but we need to highlight, is that he's 18 this year. That it was his junior year of SG ball, and he's been elevated to the Jersey Flegg. So he's taking on players on a weekly basis that are up to 3 years older than him. And I'm not sure if he's turned 18 as yet. I haven't got his birth date handy, but it's, as I said, it's his junior year of SG ball. So it's great to see him playing the sort of aggressive, physical brand of rugby league that he does. And whether he gets that call-up during the season to another step further on the run will be interesting. They might avoid doing that and just let him settle in Jersey Flegg. But there's no missing him out there with the headgear, the bright headgear, and and those charges, the rampages into the throat of the defence. It's great to watch. John, that wraps up the lower grades from last weekend, and I wanted to give some credit now to the academy players that have been selected for City and Country. When we spoke to Steve Georgalis, he had the numbers that were going to be named in those. He had a rough idea of those numbers.
Didn't want to steal the club's thunder and announce it before.
Didn't want to steal the club's thunder, no. Yeah. So we didn't drop that before the club put it out. But let's run through this because this is quite an incredible
There is also
achievement.
one missing on the male side of things as well, which I'll tack on to once you get to it.
Okay. So we've got, for the City under-17s girls, Tegan Nicholas, Georgia Wanzi, Heine Rikiti, Kaysen Morgan Pritchard, Sarah Alamadine, Isabella Bell. For the the country under-17s, Havana Cook and Amani Cook. Then for the City under-19s, Ire Surveyor, Zion Liga Liga, Jessamine Alawali'i, Freedom Crichton Rapati, Taylor Felanico, Ava Jones, Fontaine Tafunga, and Kylia Gray. And the country 19s, Alana O'Loughlin. So what are we talking about there? Like 8-9 players for each of those matches being provided by the Eels.
Huge degree of representation. And look, in the junior reps, there's a bit of, like, I don't mean it in a negative sense, but there's a bit of politicking that goes on with these rep squads where even if you're an outstanding premier, there usually is a cap on how many players you get into these rep squads because you need to get representation from across the different teams, and it's great players across the board. And you might have, 7 great players, but only 3 or 4 of them can get picked because there's other great players elsewhere that are in the same vicinity, same capacity of talent that they've got to do the right thing. The fact that this Tasha Gale squad in particular has such heavy representation shows just how dominant they were this year, I think. The fact that they have just, categorically dominated selection for the City and Country game really speaks volumes to how good they've been across the last 24 months.
Yeah, and there are probably some players there that could still count themselves unlucky. And I'm not sure whether it's to do with just not being selected or they declared their allegiance to either another state or another country. But I look at Bailey Marchong and go, how does Bailey miss out on a spot? So anyway, that's just as an example.
They haven't announced the coaching staff, by the way. I think Chris was asking if Ryan Walker's involved. They've only announced player squads right now. I'm just looking here. I can't see any coaching announcements just yet. Let me have a double check on that, Chris, because obviously Walker would be a very deserving selection in some capacity there. But Craig, you take us away.
And he's been down that path before too.
Yes, he has. Do we have any? No, it looks like there's no coaching announcements just yet. I'll keep looking for that one. But take us down the and at the end of 16's boys, there is another player we've got to throw in there as well because the club missed it apparently.
Okay, so the City under 16's boys, Lorimer Siosiu, Dion Haynes, and
Jake Capavilla. I'm not sure why he missed the cutoff there for the club, but no surprises. Jake was outstanding this year. Hard to believe, sort of given that he sort of came from nowhere in that regard, but how good he was consistently. So a very deserved call up there for Jake. And that, let me just make sure that is it was the 16s. I'm telling you. Where is it?
Well, it can't.
It could be 18s technically. Under 18s is under 16s in when you look at it with a real big squint, Craig. But yeah, he's playing for the City 16s.
Yeah, and in the City under 18s, Cyrus Bloomfield and Nick Kotarek. So it's John. It's again. I think there's some players who are unlucky to have missed out. There may be Queensland issues.
SG, part of it could be that the SG ball was so competitive this year, Craig. The top six could have all been premiers when you look at how good those squads were and how close some of those games were in the back end of the tournament there. So while it does suck that the Eels have only got minor representation at the SG ball level, the fact that some of their players are now dominating at Flegg and Cup level, again, speaks volumes to the talent that's in that squad.
I just wanted to ask one name in particular, Hayden Bell.
I don't know. That one stuns me. I suppose his problem is that he is in between the under 16s and the under 18s, right? I guess because
he'd be
a year
he'd be
young.
a 17-year-old this year. Yeah,
and so I guess they would have prioritised first year SG ball players. He picked up some sort of nick at the end of the season. Maybe he has something he's been putting off for an off-season surgery. That could also be a factor. Could have schoolboy commitments too. That school commitments that maybe it's hard to think of it, but maybe they trump a city country tournament. But yeah, that he was so good that I'm stunned that he didn't get picked even playing up an age bracket here or half an age bracket here. He was by far and away in a team that had plenty of great players. I mean, you saw some players being picked in the 16s bracket for the Eels that obviously deserved it, and CSU and Capavilla and Neon Dion. He was their best player. So it's a tough thing, Craig. And again, as I mentioned, there are some politics that go alongside of representative selections here because you're trying to placate a host of different teams and give fair representation across the board to a stack of clubs here. But geez, you do feel bad for Hayden Bell because he was outstanding this year.
He was like head and shoulders, I thought, the best lock that I saw in the competition.
Yeah.
So I guess he's competing against locks that are in the SG ball that are only 18 years of age. So that might have been a factor, but damn, unless he was injured, I just feel like that's was a particularly tough call.
Yeah,
John, the girls have got their pre-season started. The NRLW pre-season started on Monday.
Correct.
Anyone that listened to our podcast with Steve Georgalis would be aware that that was they were literally on the eve of their pre-season starting when we spoke with Steve. We've seen the girls arriving for pre-season training this week, turning up just as the fellas are finishing up later in the day. So it's all under the way. They've been champing at the bit. We spoke with Steve as well about what it means for the individual players and what it means for the team to have players playing in Origin at the moment. I don't want to spoil the podcast by going into what Steve spoke about with that. I'd encourage people to have a listen to Steve's take on that. But we, again, have to wish some players well who are playing in the Origin team, that in the Origin match for women's, that will be representing not just their state, but the Parramatta Eels. So we've got Keely Joseph and Rory Owen that are, again, selected for the Queensland team. And then we've got Kennedy Cherrington and Abby Church turning out for New South Wales again. We hope New South Wales gets the win on Thursday night and wraps up the series. It would be good to see. But we wish all four girls the very best and come through injury-free, and we'll be happy. Okay, John, that wraps up the Eels news. Any questions there from chat? We got our usual crew in there in chat.
Plenty of usuals. AJ sends his regards as well. I think we had a question from Chris going back a bit, asking for your thoughts on Arpa Twiddle turning out in the centres this week. Obviously showing some positional versatility, but yeah, plenty of good discussion there. AJ was talking about some of the Roosters, similar to the Eels, seeing their progression through the conclusion of the SG ball into young players going through to the 21s and reserve grade. So it's good to see multiple clubs looking to prioritise their development pathways there. But yeah, we'll start with Chris's question, Craig, about what you think about Arpa turning out in the centres this week.
I think it just emphasises that versatility. It's come about because of the injury to Richie Penasini. Richie would be selected at centre if he was fit, and then you'd probably see Harper being selected at fullback and maybe Brad Avery, who's brought a lot of energy to the Eels New South Wales Cup team, being the unlucky player maybe to miss out. The thing about Harper is that level of versatility that he has means that he can fit in there anywhere in the back line. If you, as we saw in the NRL, if you need him to play on the wing, he'll play on the wing. If you need him to play fullback, he'll play fullback anywhere in the halves. And now he's playing in the centres. You couldn't ask much more of a player than that. And I guess it's why he's both valued by the Eels but then sought after by Perth, and why we've lost him. So, again, I say good luck to Harper because it's been... I'm sorry to see him go. We're always sorry to see a player that we follow through pathways reach their dream but then not being able to be kept by the club. But we understand opportunity knocks. Look, it's really the same thing that happened with Ethan Sanders and Blaze Talangi. Both of those players had Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown ahead of them, and ostensibly Dylan on a deal that was going to keep him at the club to what,
another 6
2031
years.
or something like that. But really, the 9-year deal was really a 3-year deal for Dylan Brown. But that's what those players had in front of them. They saw their path being blocked. And even though the Eels might have liked to have kept them, they were never going to be able to compete with the offer from the other clubs. So if you've already invested big in your two halves that are there, you can't invest big as the other clubs would. And in the case of Blaze, the Panthers were able to offer him playing in the halves with Nathan Cleary. It was almost a no-brainer for that decision there.
Yep.
So,
he'll do a job. Oh, yeah. I saw Neil was marvelling at Jake Capavilla being in the under-16 City team, saying that there's a fair chance he could end up taller than Sean Lane at this rate. Jake's got some growing to do, that's for sure, and he's already a very tall, rangy back rower. So keen to see where that takes him because he's obviously had a fantastic year in the Harold Matts, Craig, and going to back it up next year if any indication, given that he's in the 16s bracket of the City Country game.
Yeah, and a bit of Capavilla legacy there. The Capavilla's well known at Wenty. I don't know whether it was his father or brother that would have got, I think, a start in Parramatta. Might have got a game, or it was definitely lower grades. Maybe got a game at Wests. I'm sure there was a Capavilla that ended up moving on to West Magpies. I could be wrong there.
I do wonder if the Capavillas make a mean caponata, Craig, a Sicilian dish with a bit of sauce and veggies stewed down to a nice flavour you eat with your bread. But fair point there by Neil.
Good pedigree. It's good pedigree.
Yes. Mitchie was asking a couple of times about Azari Yongi and his status this week. We sort of touched on it before, Mitchie. Obviously, he's not on the injury report, but not present in any of the team lists. And the follow-up question there from him was, is there any chance he plays this week? Which would have to be reserved, Greg, because you cannot be a factor in the NRL if you're not part of the team list 22 on Tuesday, unless you get dispensation from the NRL, and the Eels aren't going to go down that path. Is there a chance that we see Azari Yongi playing for Reggie's out of, I was about to say Kellyville, but it's North Sydney Oval?
I'd be surprised, John. I think he's as close as Gideon is to playing. But why push it? Why push it? I don't see I wouldn't see the purpose in risking Iongi for one game before a bye. I would just say bring him back after the bye. Bring him back in the round 13 magic round for the Eels.
By the way, Neil's in the 99th percentile of our watchers and listeners, it looks like. He says he's 2 metres tall and he reckons that Jake's going to have him covered. Man, if you're 2 metres tall, I'd be surprised if any NRL players you cover these days. There's not too many of the Giants left the way the game has gone. You've seen him transition out. But Jake's going to get up there. He's going to be mid-high 190s, I reckon. I'd be surprised if he doesn't tickle the 200-centimetre mark. What else we got here? Some people asking questions about Luke Metcalf. We're going to talk about him very shortly. He's going to be the lead, or one of the leads, because there's a couple of big stories this week in terms of injuries and signings. But he's up there inside the first three points for the NRL news on the run sheet. What else we got here? Along that same line, Peter's asking, Peter Torek asks about Sam Tuivasa being an elite inclusion. I think that this is just my read, Craig, and again, no inside information from where I am. But my read is that they're being very careful for Sam. They're not trying to rush him at all, and I think he'll get the full benefit of that bye week plus the time into the next game, that run in there. Given that there was a combination of a concussion and whatever impairment of the shoulder in terms of nerve or structural damage there was there, I think they want to get him back to as close, because in season you're never really 100%, even when you get a chance to rest, but as close to 100% as you can get to. So I would be very surprised to see Sam take the field at North Sydney Oval. But then again, he wouldn't be the first Eel to be on the injury report and then be an inclusion this year. In the last couple of weeks, you've seen it happen. A couple of guys that have been on the injury report and Harper and whatnot turning up suddenly in selection for New South Wales Cup. So maybe.
Yeah, I can't see him being a late inclusion, John. Just for the same reason, they don't want to rush him.
No, and
they don't want to rush him.
I think the Melbourne game is what it is. Like I would have loved to have had a fully fit and healthy Sam Tuivasa for this one. I think he makes a legitimate difference, but at the same time, they've gotten some value, some juice out of Saxon Pryke and Tony Mattielli in recent weeks. Tianka Brown's also there if they want to pull the trigger on another rookie for a bit more energy. And you've got guys like the veterans like Junior and Jack DeBellin that are probably rounding into some pretty reasonable form. So I don't think they're going to rush Sam, even though he would absolutely improve his team and is arguably probably our best forward on the roster right now if everyone's fully fit and healthy.
Any other questions, John, or do we now dive into the NRL news? I know people are going to be devastated.
I have scraped something together. I have no idea if it's going to be any good. So we can fly by the seat of our pants with intermission music. But I don't know if the cut's going to be quality, but we have to wait and see. We can discover it together, I guess.
Okay, fire away, mate. Fire away with your intermission.
Look, it's a magic round, of course. So there's any number of ways you can spin that. There's plenty of magical songs, whether it's going along with was it Sabrina the Teenage Witch and what was the one? What was the old sitcom where the ex NASA Marine guy married a witch? God, what was his name? Bewitched. Was it Bewitched? There's all sorts
Bewitched,
of all sorts of TV shows that got magical stuff in their thing, and obviously there's Voodoo Child and Voodoo Child, different songs there from the same artist or artists. But I went for something a bit more esoteric, as you know I want to do, Craig, and there's an artist called Magic Sword who does a lot of synth-based things, and I think it's pretty fitting for.
I'm a bit worried. An artist called Magic Sword.
Magic Sword, yes, who does a lot of synth-based things and real game / sci-fi, edge runner sort of setting stuff, and it fits probably for the Herculean task the Eels have. Even if the Melbourne Storm are wounded, Craig, and they're not playing great football, they are last start winners, and they certainly have the hoodoo over the Eels in Magic Round. And when Peter Goff is there, we need all the motivational music we can get. So make sure to blast people's ears. We're going to start very slow. So kind of Stranger Things vibes too. So it is a bit out there compared to some of the usual stuff we have though.
I feel like we should have an image of Peter Goff.
Oh God!
Coming up on the screen.
Final boss Peter Goff, yeah, with the demon eyes or the red eyes.
Hang on, let me see if I can bring up an image.
So it's a real final boss music here that gives way into a kind of like a desperate struggle vibe. And fittingly, I think this is In the Face of Evil, by the way. So shout out to Magic Sword for some great synth-based songs.
I'm still worried about Magic Sword, John. It's a troubling name. It sounds like
it's our. Don't worry,
male
Craig, it's our form of Eel Excalibur, and we'll draw the Magic Sword to slay the mean evil storm.
Okay, John, I wanted to start off with, and I've added this one into the run sheet.
Uh-oh.
Because SEN put out some stats about what they call the death of defence.
Hang on, where is it? I do have this. Where is it? So you'll see it up on the where Chris Ricketts or our special guest will usually be, guys. Let me just bring it across a little bit here. And I'm bringing everything across, am I? All right, well, we'll figure it out. We'll get there. So, the death of defence.
Yes, it's so. The other week I was banging on about, and I said I haven't got full season details. I just grabbed a round for average total points and how it had changed over a period of time. So it was a round at a snapshot. But when you see this, that the average winning margin back in 2020 was 17.4, and then you see the change of 18.0, 2022 where it dropped to 9.9, 15.1 in 23, 14.4 in 24, 15.7 in 25, and currently stands at 21.3 in 2026. And likewise, the percentage of games won by 10 points or less, and it's always been over 50%. And we get to this year, and it's 31.6% of games are won by 10 points or less. The blowouts.
Yeah. The blowouts will continue until morale improves. As I was saying in my Monday weekend wrap, Craig, which wasn't on Monday, it was on Tuesday because I posted the Steve Rajawas chat on Monday. I was a little bit behind schedule on the weekend. I was conflating my Cowboys references and memes with Frank Herbert's June. And, the spice must flow, the points must flow right now. The NRL controlling the flow of points, and right now they want it to flow.
So 54 games have been won this year by 10 points or more. It's an extraordinary number. Obviously it fills in the converse of the teams of the games that were won by 10 points or less of 31.6, so that it were lost at 68.4. Are the NRL not awake to this? That what they've created is a game where once you have one team getting on these roles of possession, and it's got a lot to do with what happens with the rules and the calls that are made by match officials, the fatigue that's introduced to one team rather than the other. And again, you're seeing teams that were rated as teams being thrashed by their opponents.
Yep.
It's quite extraordinary to see the score lines that are out there this year.
You and I share a deep connection with our mutual love of the Parramatta Eels, mate, and that goes across multiple facets there, across all the grades. And we've got other mutual interests too, but there is a generational difference between us. And one of the things that, for me, growing up was a big thing, still is computer gaming. And whether it's on consoles, more so PC these days, I play a ton of different games. It's a big hobby of mine. And one thing you come to learn very quickly in that sort of field of entertainment is that when the developers or the management behind the company, when they have a vision of a product that is opposed to what their fan base and the paying fan base want, it is amazing what sort of data and manipulation of information they can conjure and filter through their lens to conform to their vision of the game as opposed to what the majority of people want. And I think to bring it all together, I think you're seeing this in the NRL where there is clearly a distinct vision for the game from corporate, from the C-suite, from executive, that is deeply, diametrically opposed to what the average fan, the average Joe and Jane want from their game. And it's not to say we don't love a shootout, but what made shootout special was the fact that they were once every few rounds happening, an occurrence. That when it happened, it was kind of like, you text a message, mate, you seen this Cronulla Canterbury game? Can you believe it? It's 36 to 34 and there's still 15 minutes to play. Now it's you go between Super Saturday to the Sunday ticket if you're using the Fox terms, and it's like 60 points, 70 points. Oh, they're up by 30 to nil at half time in the case of the Roosters and the Broncos. This game isn't over. like that's not a good thing. And there is a terrible conflation between entertainment being points. And I don't know if it's an involvement of the gambling money and all the lines you can set there. That's a big part of setting up the structural argument there. But as a fan, there is a time and place for a shootout. I want my contests. I want an 18-14 victory where you're fighting tooth and nail in the final 10 minutes to cling to that 4-point, 2-point, 1-point lead, whatever it is so much more compelling and so much more to the fabric of this game where the identity of rugby league was literally, let's have less points in rugby union. That literally, they score 7 points when they kick a goal and score a try. We score, well, it was less back in the day, but it was then bumped up to 6 points. So why are we chasing points now? Artificially chasing points. And in inflation, where's the Reserve Bank of the NRL to put a cap on inflation right now? We need some fiscal prudence when it comes to the rule sets of the game, because, good Lord, it's not to say you can't have a fun game that's high scoring, but when you try and make that the norm, you just cheapen the product.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, John. I think the NRL need to have a really long, hard think about the rules that they've introduced. I don't want new rules introduced in their place. Well, not in their place, but to counter them. I think they need to have a think about winding back some of the changes.
I think we're at a point where we can just, if given the executive authority to, we could just close a chapter on the Six Again era and just say, yeah, it existed from 2019 or 2020 to circa into 2026. Let's go back to the full-on penalties. Let's go back to calling the game on its merits rather than making referees make instantaneous, six again calls that leave the defense absolutely baffled as to what. AJ's in chat and he gave us a great debrief in the preseason about the key indicators where the referee's looking for when they call six again. And I'm sure that the referees, by and large, are executing those metrics, those KPIs, pretty well, as much as we as fans will gripe about it. But the reality is they cannot inform the defense in a reasonable time as to what they've infringed on. They just call six again ruck infringement. And obviously the 10 metres is a clear one. They can say six again 10 metres. That is the one that is absolutely defined and is way easier to communicate. But when a defense doesn't know what they've been penalised for, how can they adjust? How can they make the correct follow-up procedures to make sure they don't get penalised again? And the game is just, beyond any fatigue issues, which are huge, and injury issues, which are huge, the fact that we cannot effectively communicate between official and player what they are being penalised for and potentially losing a game for because of the way that momentum and possession and the flow of the game goes for, it's terrible. How can you expect a team to better themselves if they don't know what they're getting penalised for?
Yeah. And the other point too, of course, is that the fatigue that's created with this, where there's no stoppage, because there isn't a penalty where the players can take a moment to compose themselves. It's just they keep going and going, and sometimes you feel like there is a script that's being followed here. The arm is going to keep waving for six again until the try is scored. And inevitably, the try is scored because the number of times you see 2 or 3 set restarts called one after the other, especially if they're coming in the latter part of the count, because there's a massive difference between a six again call at the start and a six again call. Let's not get started
on cynical six agains that deliberately allow the defense the best chance to reset. And a lack of mechanism to punish it. But let's just, if we won the super Powerball, like the American style, European style billion ones, and you were able to buy the competition, I think it's fair to say most fans would say, let's put the six again era behind us. People have talked about the hypotheticals of what happens instead of a six again. It just goes, it winds back one tackle on the tackle count. So on tackle 3, instead of a full set restart, you get tackle 2 and then proceed. It's clunky. It's inelegant. And again, theoretically, the six agains aren't a bad aren't a bad direction for the game to go, but as executed and as envisioned by the current administration, I'm willing to just cut bait. Let's just go back to full-on penalties. Let's properly enforce full-on penalties. Let's crack down on cynical penalties. If teams want to repeat and infringe, they can get a man put in the bin. And if we need to introduce a power play sin bin to encourage referees to use that power, that can be something we explore. It's something I know you don't want to keep tinkering with the game, Craig, but referees have historically proven to be hesitant when the best teams consistently exploit the rules. They introduce whistle fatigue. So there are things we can explore there. I just don't think the 6 again's the way to punish it or to police the game.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, John, on to the TCT Schooner of reality. And this week, it's something that you and I have spoken about in the past, and it's the Bulldogs, and the grass is not always greener. In fact, I almost would say, John, the grass definitely isn't greener on the other side at Belmore, because we've seen players that have been, I'm trying to think of the right word, lured by the Gus Gould magic to come and join the Bulldogs.
Sold some fool's gold.
And
perhaps. Yeah,
it is based on fool's gold, exactly. So we saw Reid Marnie lured over from the Eels, and we know how that finished up. There is no loyalty there. He was turfed. He was dropped back from first grade during the season last year. He was then turfed. He's picked up a contract at North Queensland. He's doing well there. When he left the Eels tried to keep him, but the money that was being offered by the Bulldogs got up into the ridiculous territory for Reid and his background in the game. And we understand that it went north of 700,000 that he was able to get at the Bulldogs. Now, we've had many other players that have either left the Bulldogs or were turfed out by the Bulldogs because their usefulness had expired. These were players lured to start the club or like rebuild the club, and quickly they got rid of the halfback last year. What was his name again? That was
Toby Sexton.
Was Toby Sexton,
Now
right?
Perth Bear.
You could argue that Toby Sexton was part of the reason that the Bulldogs were sitting pretty up near the top of the table. And then the Dogs come in late. The Eels looked like that they were ready to secure Lockie Galvin to come to the club. The Dogs put him into their club. He doesn't really fit the mould there as a player. They've not done well. And
it's a square peg into a triangle hole, isn't it? Like he is an out and out 5'8", and they're insisting he's a halfback, and he might be in 5 years' time, but he isn't right now.
And the thing is, it's his reputation that's suffering.
Yeah.
And this is the point that I'm making with the Schooner of reality, is that players need to think very carefully about why they go to certain clubs. Because right now, at the moment, the player that seems to be struggling is Stephen Crichton, of all people. He's looked at sea the last couple of weeks at centre because the defensive system seems to be falling apart at the Bulldogs, and you start to get that loss of faith in the players around you. There's all sorts of internal rumblings that are coming out from the club, and with people that are supposedly unhappy about this and that, and you don't want to get into all of that. All I will say is, it seems to me that they don't mind cutting a player who was lured and made different promises about the rebuild that's going on, and as soon as something shinier comes along, they're ready to grab that something shinier. Maybe people will say, hey, this is what rugby league's about. This is what it has to be. The fans deserve the very best team that can be assembled. All I will say is have a look at where the Bulldogs are on the ladder and tell me that player dissatisfaction might not be at work there.
Yeah, and look, it sort of runs tangential to what you're talking about, Craig, with the gung-ho and really dopamine hits of big signings that Gus has made. And fans have pointed towards the likes of Newcastle and the Tigers this year, saying, hey, look what they've done. They've signed big name. Look where they are. But again, there is a cautionary tale there that we've got, not quite half a season's worth of data in a very weird year. And right now, the West Tigers, was it Jamie? I think Jamie was saying the West Tigers are his schooner of reality, where it's come to bite them pretty fast and hard in the backside, hasn't it? Where a couple of injuries, they've lost momentum, they've lost confidence. And Newcastle, again, like they're doing really, I don't want to take the shine off Newcastle because I think they're a fantastic story this year, Craig. But they're throwing a lot of money at their problems. They obviously went and got Dylan Brown. Trey Mooney's been a great signing for them. And they've, got Callum Ponga back. But we've seen a third of a season's of work out of Dylan Brown at 5'8" in a very weird state of flux at the rule set.
Sorry, at halfback.
At halfback. My brother's long-term theory that Dylan Brown would have been a gun fullback, which is probably not too far off the truth, coming to be a Freudian slip there. But the reality is
I know a very smart judge of football who believes the exact same thing.
Yeah, there was I think we actually spoke about it at one point as well, in the 2023, I think it was. The reality is like throwing money at your problems, it gives you the dopamine hit, and it might see a burst of success when things line up. But, and this isn't to say the Eels shouldn't be making a big recruit. We've been really trying to drive home that they need an elite recruit or two. But you can't just willy-nilly throw money at the problem. And while it might have gotten results in the short term for the Tigers and even Newcastle right now, there is every bit the reality that, like the Bulldogs, the grass won't be greener when things shake out and things normalise. So, again, not to say that the Eels should not be chasing marquee players and elite talent, but just throwing money at the best player on the market is a surefire way to get yourself in trouble more than it is to fix things. And like you said, the Dogs have had the best in the business and Phil Gould, the biggest name, the most influential recruiter. And how well has that ended up for a host of their most recent star signings? Like I said, Craig, they're either departed from the club or having their name dragged right now. Like Lachlan Galvin, he is the poster boy for all the Dogs' issues, whether it's right or wrong. Because, they're trying to put a square peg into a triangular hole where he is not a halfback, yet he's been tasked with being the halfback. You're seeing fractures in the playing group. Stephen Crichton was he's that captain. He missed the plane. And then he's barking at players, like not just like telling them off because we see Mitchell Moses do that with famously talented Silva, but he's getting really fired up against these other players on the field. And, they're clearly not in a happy place right now.
Yeah. So just be aware, players out there, when you're looking to sign, there might be something that looks nice and shiny. It's not necessarily going to be the case.
Agreed.
Dearden out of Origin, John.
Yeah, look, you feel for the Cowboys because obviously the Eels have felt the injury bug more than perhaps anyone outside of, say, the Brisbane Broncos now. I think we're pretty neck and neck there. And I know we mentioned in the Instant Reaction podcast, Craig, that the discussion, the discourse around that tackle that injured him could have been very toxic. And I really do credit Cowboys fans, while they'll understandably upset, there hasn't been a really, vitriolic diatribe about the mechanics of that tackle. I think that one, as we mentioned in that same pod, when people talked about how can you police the hip drop tackle because of the line breaks, that is the sort of tackle that really came to mind, where you're trying to save a try, you're on the guy's back, you don't drop down, but because of the mechanics of the tackle, you can only go one place, and that's where the player's pulling you. So that was a terrible injury. He's looking at a couple months on the sideline, isn't he, Craig? Sort of 6 to 8 weeks, I think it is. Look, yeah. Dearden's one of my favourite players, Craig. In many ways, he reminds me of a young Mitchell Moses. Not one-to-one, but there's some overlap in their skill sets, a lot of acceleration, great ball runner that's grown from a 5'8" into a halfback. And there's no doubt that it's going to hurt the North Queensland Cowboys, a ton, and then it's going to impact State of Origin. And you've already seen a very rigorous discourse around who replaces him. Do the Maroons go for seniority and experience? Do they take a punt on a young player from AJ's neck of the woods in Sam Walker? There's half a dozen different players being listed, but it sucks to see a player injured like that because, that's a football injury, for lack of a better term. Like, it's just like one of those ones that happens. But given what we've been through, mate, I think we can emphasise more than anyone else how much it sucks to see a great player taking out the game, even if it's just bad luck.
Yeah, no one wants to see any player get injured. So it's going to be interesting to see how the North Queensland Cowboys navigate that period of time without him.
Clifford's been good for them. So
Queensland have plenty of options, mate.
Yeah,
they really do have plenty of options.
They could go back to the seniority world, go get DCE back. I don't know if did he announce his retirement from representing football? I don't know, but he would be the first Queensland halfback to step out of retirement and lead into a series win. They've got Jamal Fogarty for another safe, experienced option if they want, a guy that can just distribute the ball and kick. Mentioned Sam Walker, Ezra Mam. I mean, the player that we're going to talk about tangentially because of what's happened with Luke Metcalf, like you've got what's his name, Tanner Boyd. Like he's a Broncos junior. He'd qualify for State of Origin for them. So they've got options. Like they could pivot a number of different ways here. I thought it was ridiculous, Craig, but Brent Reid was trying to push Callum Ponga to number 7. I think if you're going to play Ponga in the halves at all at Origin level, you need to have a dominant halfback and then play him at 6 as the minority or offside playmaker. But he'll be in the mix there in some capacity too, whether it's 1 or 14. But it's I know that the Maroons going to use this, and they've already have, to seize the initiative on being the monster underdogs. There's no way they can win. Classic Queensland approach, secure underdog status, and then build the siege mentality. But the reality is, Tom Dearden being out sucks for them. Like, he is a genuine star in the game, but they've got options. And AJ's saying he'd love Sammy to get the gig, but it's going to raise his salary even further if he gets an Origin start. Yeah, those KPIs kick in very quickly when it comes to Origin football, don't they? Or the salary boosts.
Could the Queenslanders just follow that path of putting in the most talented players and find a spot for them and play Ponga at fullback and Reece Walsh in the halves?
Yeah, well, I think that's what Reid was trying to suggest, and I think he was saying that Ponga, who has a bit of experience in the halves, is probably a better fit in that situation. But my problem is that they, in my vision of it, they would work as the secondary playmaker. You'd want the Cooper Cronk, the Jonathan Thurston, the prime Daly Cherry Evans to be the on-ball guy, directing all the guys around, handling most of the kicking duties. Obviously, they could turn the DCE to do that, but with Cam Munster there, which is the other consideration, I don't think they have the dominant on-ball half that you'd want. Not so you can't win without one. Origin is a unique beast like that. But I think if they're going to play Ponga, he'd be on the extended bench. He'd be a part of the 6-man bench for Origin. It is a 6-man bench for Origin, right?
Okay.
I can't keep up with the rules.
Yeah, I can't keep up with it as well, and because there's different rules for the men's and women's game.
Yeah, women's don't have 6 again.
It makes it even more challenging. Let's get into the question that a lot of people wanted asked, and that's around Luke Metcalf, because he's going to leave the Warriors at season's end, and the questions being asked. Parramatta hasn't been listed amongst the clubs that are interested in Luke Metcalf. John, my question to you is: should we be interested, and why or why not?
I'm going to say no. And it might be the controversial. I know a lot of fans are keen to go out and get a stud replacement at number 6, the partner of Mitchell Moses. I've got issues with Metcalf, and it's not from a talent perspective, Craig, but the reality is that he's 27 this year, and in the last 6 years, I'm going to just go find the numbers here, because there was I think it was a Broncos fan on Reddit who brought this to light, which it lined up with what my perception was, but he actually had the quantifiable numbers. Where has he gone? I think it's in the vicinity of 6 years, and he's played 42 games. What do I always say, Craig? What is, when I'm talking about player selection and recruitment, what above, obviously you want character, you want talent, you want potential, but you need a guy that can be picked every week. And if your best ability isn't your availability, what do you got? And Metcalf is a talented 5'8" / halfback. He obviously sees himself as a halfback, but I don't think the problem is him playing halfback, Craig. I think the problem is that right now he's obviously been shunted because of the outstanding form of Tanner Boyd, and the Warriors have Chanel Harris-Tavita right there. So it's not even he's not playing halfback; he's just not playing. And beyond that, while he would be if he was healthy, be a great plug-and-play option for the Eels to start at 6. You've got a couple of young kids that in this looming salary cap era, it obviously has always been a salary cap era in the NRL, but with 2 new teams coming in, one has got a complete tax haven status, and the other one has just gotten and deservedly because of what is happening with the Chiefs. But the Bears have just gotten some walking around money from the NRL. They've been given a nice little bump to their ability to recruit marquee players at the top end. The Eels need to extract as much value from their young players and from their differential players, like the guys they take a punt on in terms of value, as they can. And I think that when you've got Mitchell Moses on a big fat deserved deal, Young's just been upgraded. Both your dummy halves are locked in. 5'8" is probably the position where whether it's going to be Ronald Volkman with an extension, whether it's going to be Lorenzo or Lincoln Fletcher, any combination of Cam Bambut, you need to start extracting value from there and fast. So for me, it's a pass. I can understand why fans want him, but that let me just try and find I can't. I'm an idiot.
I'm just looking at the rugby league project, and it has 43 games in the NRL since 2021.
Yeah.
7 games across 2 seasons with the Sharks, and 36 games across 4 seasons, 3.5.
This is all within the context that Parramatta could get him for a reasonable market value, and that reasonable market value is not going to exist because, I just mentioned, the Bears got walking around money now. They need a marquee recruit in the spine. PNG could pair him with, and it obviously wouldn't be for next year, but from the year they could pair him with Jerome Luai. And while I don't like that balance in the halves, it's 2 first-grade halves, and it's a great start for an expansion franchise. Beyond that, the Dragons are desperate for a half. There's a number of teams that will be willing to back up a bank truck and make any perceived value you could get out of that deal evaporate very quickly. So, I like him as a player, and obviously his campaign last year prior to the knee injury was outstanding. He was leading Dally M's, and deservedly so. But I think this is where you'd want the Eels to be judicious. And he's a player that just can't stay on the park. And we've already got a halfback that's shown some fragility in the last couple of years in Mitch, who don't get me wrong, Mitch is an absolute warrior for us, and there's no doubt he leaves it all on the field for us. But he's had some mechanical repairs in the last couple of seasons. So I don't want my 2 starting halves having that kind of concern about their status on a week-to-week basis in the team. And on top of that, I like what the Eels have in the pipeline, whether it's Ronald Volkman right now, Joash, Lorenzo, Lincoln, Cameron. There's half a dozen players there that I think the Eels need to be looking to extract value from so they can prioritise spending money in other positions.
I spoke before about how the Eels lost both Ethan Sanders and Blaze Talangi, and that really came from seeing their path to first grade blocked. Now, the Eels always any club has to be careful about whether you worry too much about the perception from players who are competing for a spot. You don't get too precious, that sort of thing. You want to say to them, back yourselves. There's competition here. That's a good thing. Back yourself to get it, because the start of this season, Ronald Volkman probably wasn't in the discussion about who's going to be playing 5/8 for the Eels this season. Most pundits probably saw him as a backup player, maybe at number 3 or 4 in the pecking order. But he's taken his opportunity with both hands and shown that he's an NRL player. Whether in the long run he holds on to the 5/8 position or not, whether he is extended by the Eels or not, that's still an unknown, because I think the Eels want him, but I don't think he's locked in past this season.
That's right, off contract end of year. He's playing some good football, at least offensively, while defensively, there's been some missed tackles, but some great hustle plays too. You got to imagine that the Eels would like to keep him in at the right rate. I think that having a hedge against Lorenzo and Lincoln and Cam and even Joash is important. and he's shown that he can play alongside Moses quite well. But it takes two to tango, doesn't it? And he's going to want to try and maximise his value after having his own, very torrid path to walk to where he got to get to where he is right now today with the issues that he's had at the Warriors and St. George. I can't blame him if he wants to try and secure a long-term deal somewhere. And do the Eels want that, or do they want to just put him in that hedge status?
John, the only thing that I could be certain about is I wouldn't think he'd want to go to St. George after the mess that they made. And likewise, I keep getting people sending me rumours that he's going to go back to the Warriors. Given what the Warriors are doing, he would be so far away from getting a gig. That
one was a popular one on socials last sort of week and a half. Like you said, Craig.
Yeah.
And not to say it couldn't happen, and if he was content to go be a backup to, because Harris Tavita's in a similar situation where he's off contract, I believe. But you got to imagine the Warriors want to make him a priority retention. That combination of Tanner Boyd's been mint for them, and I think they'll try and make that their priority. And they've also got beyond that, young Jet Cleary's in their system as well, ready to make his NRL debut at any point. So, look, Volkman very well might end up somewhere else outside of Para because of, like I said, the context of where he want to be. He doesn't want to sign a 1 or 2 year deal, I'll hazard a guess. If I was him, I'd be looking for a 3 year deal plus somewhere. Probably just 3 years, probably what he could be getting. But the Eels want to see him as a genuine contender to the 6th jersey, but also a hedge against their young guys. And he might want more than that. And that's just where, can they find a common ground somewhere in between?
Next bit of news, Sania Taruva's extended with the Tigers, John. Can I leave you to talk with that? I'm going to have to get a power cord because I'm about to run out of power. Yeah.
Yeah. So breaking story this evening.
Professional, mate.
Breaking story this evening. On top of a recent flurry of recruitment, or also retention from the Tigers in recruitment, but Sania Taruva. Obviously, they've lost Jerome Luai to the Chiefs, but he's locked in till the end of 2030. That goes alongside the retentions of Jareem Buller and who else they retained recently? I think one of the Faini boys, maybe. So they've been doing a bit of in-house retention work there. Look, Tito Taruva, obviously a very polarizing figure. He's one of those guys that I imagine you'd love him if he's on your team because he's all heart and effort and plenty of impact. But there's no doubt that he's a bit of a prat when it comes to his interactions with opposing players. But for the Tigers, that's an important retention. Helps lock in a fair chunk of their backline now, Craig. They've got obviously Taylor and the May boys who signed up. So the May boys alongside Dream Buller and then obviously Tito Taruva. So alongside Taylor and May, Taruva gives them probably, I'd say, their starting 2 centres for the next few years. They've got a couple of young players on the wing in Laulili and the one that's been injured / dropped in recent weeks in Makasini. And also the other one that they re-signed. Who was the other young kid that he debuted against us? I think he was the one that actually it wasn't. Laulili was the one that hurt like not intentionally, but he hurt Simonson. Where is the Tigers game here? What's his name? God,
you've got me drawing the blank.
It's now I'm gonna have to go back a couple of rounds. Where is it? The Tigers played. They got pumped in this game. Was he playing in this game? He Falatino Tavana. Tavana was the one I was thinking of. So they've got like most of their backline locked in now. I was just saying, Craig, I don't know if you caught it. Taruva's a polarizing character, one of those guys. You love him if he's on your team. He's a bit of a ball of energy, a catalytic factor, but he's obviously a bit of a prat, a bit of a wanker to the opposition. And so the Eels have had their fair share of pushes and shoves, and he's led it up against the Eels in games. But I think this is, on the whole, a pretty solid signing pretty solid retention for the Tigers.
Yeah, given that his good mates taken off to the PNG franchise.
There would have been some concerns from the Tigers, I think, that he might have joined Luai, but they've done a good job locking him up.
Yes, next one on the docket, John, just in time the Storm end their losing run.
There are two ways to look at this, obviously, because it is probably a two-true outcome proposition. Is it a good thing that the Storm had their bounce-back win against the Tigers? Or is it a bad thing that they're now potentially back in form just in time for the Eels? Now, this might be your Schooner reality follow-up, if you want to have a little encore here, what do the fans say? What does chat say? Would you rather and look, the game was pretty shit. Like, I'm not going to – the Tigers are awful. They had a lot of injuries. The Storm weren't that good. They had a little flurry inside the first 16 minutes where they were smashing the clock, and then they really slowed down. But would you rather the Storm get it out of the system last week and maybe revert back to who they've been for the last 2 months? Or are you concerned that this is the Storm getting back to who they've been for 2 decades and maybe making a bit of a push towards the top 8? What's your...
For me, John, I was always concerned that the Storm were going to get that return win against us, that there was some sort of motivation about being up there in Magic Round in front of bigger crowds, and enough's enough. And what do you know, they get that return win against the Eels. There's a part of me that's glad they got that return win, that comeback win in terms of their season against the Tigers. I look at the Melbourne performance, and to me, there's elements of typical Melbourne about it where they, and I've said this many times, unless you see the Storm live, you've got no perception about how fast they can play the game at the start of a game. Bodies in motion, fast play. If you can hold them in that opening salvo that they like to throw in the first 15, 20 minutes, then you can make a contest of any game against the Storm. All through their history, even as good as they've been, survive that opening part of the game and it's game on. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but you're going to be in the contest against the Storm. If you can't survive it, as we haven't been able to do against them in those opening rounds the last couple of years, and it gets ugly. And we've had it getting ugly.
I tell you what,
against us, especially 25 was...
Yeah. Revisiting round one this year, we could do without dual sin bins in the 0th and 65th minute. Probably a good way to not give the Melbourne Storm a man advantage twice up in the game. But it also goes, like, looking back on that one, it was 18-4 at half-time, Craig, and they had the running in the first half on the back of that sin bin. The possession splits favoured them, but not as aggressively in the first half as they did in the second half. And obviously in the second half, they ran away with it, scoring, what was it, like 6 tries in that window there. So, yeah, I think if the Eels can establish themselves in this one, not to the similar to what they've done for the last few weeks, where, yeah, they've like obviously won the last game, but then lost against Manly. If they can be competitive, I think Melbourne are there to be beaten. And obviously, you know, all your usual indicators when you're playing Melbourne, watch what Harry Grant's doing. You know he's going to have a crack at from short range. He's devastating in that regard. You know, Far Longwell, they're a bit lucky to have him this week. There was concerns over potential facial fracture, and somehow he's escaped concussion protocols out of all that as well. But they've got Stefano on the front row. Yeah, their forward pack's still a bit light though. Like it's not the fearsome pack of old. Not to say they couldn't beat us in the middle. They did that in round one, between our own issues, between what Peter Goff did, and a pretty aggressive interpretation of the rules in round one, maybe to send a message for the Eels for their unwillingness to toe the corporate line. But are we going to see it again this week? I don't know. I don't think there's any more malice in those sort of directives outside of round one. If we're going to get reamed, it's going to be because Peter Goff is Peter Goff, and just we talked about it, but the way he officiates doesn't align with how the Parramatta Eels play, whether it's been under Brad Arthur or Jason Riles. But yeah, I tend to think that the win last week was probably better for us. I think they might, if anything, lose a little bit of focus, a little bit of drive, but they're going to be up for it. Like they know the history. They know 2019. They know 2024. They know that they've beaten us by 60 and 48 points in those 2 games. They're going to be up for it. I mean, Suncorp's their stomping ground. They've got a better record there than the Broncos. So Eels have to be up for this one regardless of what happened last week. If I had to pick one, I would say it's probably better. And I think chat's probably a little bit divided. Some people saying that, you know, they don't like it. Some people saying that they think it's better, which it's a fair point. It's probably the fair barometer of the situation. I don't think there's a good read on it. Yeah.
So the consensus from chat is nothing. No consensus.
No consensus. It looks like
the consensus is no.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then. I posed a question to you, mate. Has Manly been kissed on the proverbial with their draw? Because they're, apart from that game against the Panthers where they put in a really good showing to only just go down to the Panthers, they've played teams that we've talked about the possession splits that they've had that have been atrocious when it's come to completions. And then in the last 2 weeks, and they did this too against us, they got to face a Parramatta team that was decimated by injury. They got to face the Broncos at arguably their lowest ebb in terms of their injured players. And now this week they play the Tigers. And it's, you have to think, what's going on? Is Fosball tapping into the gods, the football gods, with this? Because I don't think you could get a better time to play the Tigers than what they've got this week and the players that the Tigers have got out. Manly should win this in a canter against that Tigers team and continue their climb up the ladder. But what about the Dolphins' form against them? They were atrocious. The Cowboys completed at, 41% or something absurd in the first half against them. They couldn't hold the ball for any set of six. It was diabolical. We made errors that were ridiculous against them, and they only just ended up scraping home. Plus, we had players out. Like, it was. You'd love to have the run that they've had. If you're Anthony Seibold, you're going, now, if I had have hung in for just one more week, this probably would have all still unfolded.
Look, I do give Kieran Foran some credit, Craig. He's obviously, I think, while he may not be as unorthodox as old mate Desi, he does share similar methodology of, circling the wagons, bringing the team together, really, player-driven confidence. And he's done a great job. We should not take that away from him. He's done a great job. They've had some issues to deal with in terms of injuries. Obviously, Tom Tebojevic has not been available consistently, and they've had to work around that. And then more recently, unfortunately, terrible injury to CSI Takiaho, which may be a career ender for him, and that's awful, which I do hope he makes a speedy recovery and can get back to play, but given his age and the nature of that injury, it might be a bit too much. But, I love my sports idioms and, the sort of sayings and whatnot, and while timing may not be everything, it's a very good thing, isn't it? And for the Manly Seagulls, their timing has been immaculate. Like you said, they've come across opponents that have either been, for whatever reason, like an aberration on a 1 week basis, incredibly out of form. Like that Dolphins and Cowboys efforts. We know that there can be mercurial teams, but not like that. Like that was like instead of getting the magic spray in their hands, they'd Vaseline in their hands. They couldn't hold on to the ball, neither team. And then obviously with Parramatta, there's the injuries. With the West Tigers next week, there's the injuries. They came against a Penrith team who it was probably their second worst performance of the season outside of that bizarre loss to Canterbury. Penrith were clearly better than them, but they refused to put them away. They were playing with their food. So, yeah, look, they've been the benefactors of some lovely timing for them, but you can only play what's in front of you. And in that regard, Manly and Foran have done well. And that's why when we talk about confidence being so liquid but so important, when the draw spits out the means and the opportunities to steal 1, 2, 3, 4, in this case it was 5 wins, wasn't it? Or 4 wins, 5 wins for Manly before they dropped the game. Yeah. You got to take it because we've seen it with Canberra last year. We've seen it with teams in the past. Teams that obviously there's talent in the Canberra team last year and the Manly team here. We mentioned that any team can beat any team on a given day, but when a team starts stringing together those victories, they start punching above their weight consistently, and that's what you saw with Canberra last year, and that's why Canberra this year, despite not being a vastly different team in terms of roster, they've normalised. They've regressed to the mean a bit, and they're a fringe 8 team, whereas last year they were the minor premiers. And I think you're seeing that a bit with Manly now, where they've had the run of luck, of opportunity, and they've managed to turn that into some form, and they might now be punching above their weight for most of the season. But this harkens back to what I was saying before. it's a bold call to begin locking in Kieran Foran long term. And, he's a great story for Manly. Obviously one of their, local juniors, incredible success. He overcame some stuff off the field and carved out an incredible NRL career. But he's also not had any adversity as a coach right now. And when things, are great as a coach, you can crest momentum and you can find these wins and punch above your weight. I'd want to see how he goes handling some genuine adversity as a coach, because obviously he's done it as a person, and maybe that's what they're reflecting on as their evaluation of his ability to do that. They're sort of preempting it. But Brad Fittler had an awesome run as a rookie coach, and similar story.
Yep.
Obviously there's also the Penrith connection for Brad Fittler, but storied Sydney Rooster was incredible for them. Won premierships, representative superstar, came in as that rookie coach. Was the talk of the town, had a sort of a underperforming Rooster team turn around and playing great football, and then the wheels fell off once he actually got to some adversity. And Freddie's obviously done some stuff at rep football. It's a different beast. Mal Meninga won 8 straight series, State of Origin. Like, rep football's a different beast. And look, I think Foran is probably a better. If I had to weigh him on a scale, I'd say Foran is a better coach in terms of the tangibles and intangibles. Just the way he's conducted himself in the media. His knowledge of the game of ball, and how when he speaks about it, you can tell that there is. And again, not saying Freddie hasn't got football intelligence, but Foran can communicate it very well. I just think that it's a bit early to be signing him up long term. It might not be an inspired signing. I'm not saying that it could be wrong, but they're taking a pretty significant risk in just weighing up, like you said, being kissing the proverbial right now for the Seagulls.
Yeah, John. We're going to wrap things up by talking about Magic Round.
Magic Round.
And apart from the Eels game, what game or games attract your attention?
There's some interesting stuff on the docket, like maybe not even from a positive standpoint. Like how bad are the Dogs going to be this week? Like that is an ongoing drama that I'm invested in now. Like how bad can it get?
Yeah.
Like they are struggling mightily right now. Serrato's lashing out the officials, and we talked about it. I want Jason Rolls to tactically go after the referees when it's proper. But when you get hammered the way that they did last week, you can't be lashing out the officials the way Serrato did. Like handle your own business internally. And it's like we really got tilted about the Easter Monday game, Craig, because that was a game that was right there to be won. There were some genuinely controversial calls there. We griped about round 1 against Melbourne. Like we clearly got some bad calls there. But at the end of the day, when you lose 50 points to 4 or whatever it was in that game, there's only so much you can complain about the officials. And that's where the Dogs are right now. How bad can it get? There's going to be more on-field drama between players, the way that we've seen in recent weeks. Connor Tracy had an absolute shocker in the last round. I don't mind Connor Tracy, but I think you're starting to see the limits of starting him for multiple years, and they've just re-signed him. He's an incredible utility player, but I don't think he's in an era where fullback play is so important, they should be aspiring to have better at number 1. They haven't. Beyond that, mate, the Dolphins and Rabbitohs game could be a bit of a old school shootout, I guess, the way that we look forward to in the past. I don't know. It's a bit thin out. It's not a great lineup for Magic Round. I'm not going to lie. I think Roosters Cowboys. I don't know if AJ's still in chat. That could be a fun game. Both teams have got the capacity to score a lot of points. The Tigers Seagulls on paper could have been a good game if there weren't the injuries that are bogging down Wests. But as it stands, like you mentioned, Craig, silver platter here for the Seagulls. Like if they don't win here, they've missed a massive trick. So yeah, I don't think it's a great docket for Magic Round, if I'm going to be brutally honest.
It's interesting. Your first thought was the Sharks and the Dogs. So I wrote down 2 games that interest me. The first is the Sharks and the Dogs. The same reason that you see it that way as well is how deep into trouble can the Dogs get. Conversely, if the Sharks can't take the Dogs in the Dogs' current form, and there's a few question marks about the Sharks as well now.
2 50-point wins followed up by 2 terrible performances. How do you get a read on that team? I don't know. I don't understand Cronulla right now. And they might just be a reflection of the current rule set. I don't know. They're just so volatile.
that's possible, John, but there's a part of me that's like, I'd love to see the Dogs have another loss. Just keep losing, keep having internal problems, have the players, the fans, go and join JC in his quest for mental, like just losing his mind over the team, and because I think some of them are identifying with him, or he's trying to suggest to them, come and join the club of misery. So, but the other one too, and for similar reasons, it's the Panthers against the Dragons.
$11, Craig.
Now,
Parramatta have had some audacious line set against them throughout this year with their injuries. I don't think we've been at $11. Oh my goodness.
There's people out there, like I think even JC was saying it, that this literally could be a basketball score that the Panthers put on.
The NBA finals are on right now, so the Panthers might channel. There isn't a Panthers equivalent, I suppose, because the Carolina Panthers play NFL, but it could be a basketball score. We could be heading towards 60-plus points the way the Roosters put 60 on the Dragons. And how much Penrith want to play for their food? Like, surely Milky Jenkins wants to bag a forfeit to get back on track with all the tries he's been scoring. So, I don't know. And look, I wanted to say on the Dragons, Craig, Cade Reid, broken hand, out for 3 months. Like, I've been pushing for at least a slice of NRL football for Lorenzo Talatona at some point this year. I'm still on that bandwagon, but it's got to be a managed workload, hasn't it? If you're going to bring him in, you can't just throw him to the Wolves like Cade Reid got thrown to the Wolves. And Flanagan didn't do much right at St. George, but he was absolutely right about throwing Cade Reid in too early. And, he showed spark the talent, but he was physically not up to it. And the broken hand might be just bad luck, but if it wasn't the broken hand, it was going to be something else. And, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Who comes back in, baby? Kyle Flanagan. He is inevitable at St. George.
But it should be a lesson to fans about wanting young players thrown into the deep end.
They're not shiny toys, just use and abuse and throw in there. There needs to be a crafted plan, and that's not to say that Lorenzo couldn't get a couple of games and go back to Reggie's, but you can't do a Cade Reid to him.
No, and you also have to make sure that, and it's not just a plan about how they get used, but it's the players that they have around them, that had been to my point with the Eels with elite recruitment, that I think the younger players will develop better with having elite players that are there to play alongside. And that's not a criticism of the current Eels lineup in any way. I'm just saying add one or two really high-class players into the mix, and you don't just improve the club as a destination point for players that are looking to maybe come and play alongside some classy players. You look to add that development perspective to the younger players that are coming through. They'll be playing alongside others who can help guide them, look after them on the field, give them a word of encouragement, a word of support, a word of getting into them where they need to learn the hard way as well. It's seeing that the injury that happens to a young player where that physicality is too much for them at their level of development. It's a harsh thing. We've spoken many times with what players and coaches and others in the game have said to us about it takes around 4 pre-seasons for players to develop an NRL physique. Just that time in the pre-season, the time in the gym to be physically ready for the demands that are there in the NRL with that level of contact that's there. So, but John, just back to it, I think the score could be anything. If Penrith are in a ruthless mood, it could get really, really ugly. And there's a lot of people that are starting to ask questions. Will the Dragons get a win this season? I think they'll get a win at some point, but
have you seen their schedule?
It's not going to be this week.
Have you seen their schedule? Like they might have, and look, obviously any given Sunday's the NFL term, but any given game can absolutely spit out a crazy upset. But it's, I mean, it's an away game, but it's a neutral setting because it's Suncorp. But it's Panthers this week. It's at home against the Warriors. It's at Suncorp against the Broncos. At Cronulla, at Newcastle, which is no longer a gimme game. Like that was one they would have had circled at the start of the season, saying, "Yeah, we got like that's a favoured matchup." It isn't anymore. At Canberra, which is historically a bad matchup between the two clubs, not necessarily in recent times, but Canberra's still in a better position than Dragons. Then they host the Tigers. They got a bye in New Zealand. Then they host the Titans in round 21. The Titans in round 21 is the first game where they might be favoured, if not somewhere near parity when it comes to setting the line, both as betting and just as a football evaluation thing. Because then they got the Dolphins, the Sharks, the Tigers, the Bulldogs, maybe, Manly, and then Parramatta. Like, statistically speaking, they're going to get some wins, Craig. That's just how it works. Like, the odds of a winless season far, far, far outweigh, in terms of unlikeliness, the odds of not jagging a win here or there. But they could be in for a miserable stretch, mate. Because we talked about the confidence for Manly, and even the Tigers before injury struck them. Obviously, the inverse is true too. When things get bad, they get bad. Like, and if confidence is a liquid gold thing for helping win games, despair and apathy absolutely exist in sports too, and players start losing confidence. They start, cutting corners. They start playing worse football when they're in a state of perpetual just, sadness, which is where the Dragons are right now.
I can't believe how far they've fallen from a team that was unlucky to not take the win against the Bulldogs in the opening round, who were competitive against the Storm until late in the game.
With the benefit of more present knowledge, maybe that explains a lot, doesn't it, between Canterbury and Melbourne?
Yeah, it probably does. But they competed for a bit against us as well. But as we've said about confidence and what that can breed in a team, so too just that complete lack of faith and confidence from losing. And that seems to be where they're going. There is nothing about the way they are playing now that says they believe in themselves. And maybe there's a game where we talked about how the Eels got that victory over the Cowboys. If they can stay in the game on the scoreboard somewhere in these next few games, if they can stay in the game on the scoreboard, something might fall for them in the game, whether it be a lucky call, a lucky bounce, or just they put on something where the ball sticks, where they don't drop it. Player hits a perfect line that they run. You never know, but they've got to have that opportunity on the scoreboard. So anyway, that pretty much wraps up our NRL news, John, unless there's anything late breaking.
I did see a question from Josh in chat, and it's a fair one given that he unfortunately finds himself on the injury report once again, but he was sort of looking to gauge our thoughts on the future of young Richard Penasini, given that he's going to probably spend more time on the sideline than he has on the field this year, and he is out of contract at the end of the year, as far as I understand. Tough. Look, you can't let emotions rule your ability to recruit and retain. And if you're weighing up Richard's talent, which is real, like Richard is undoubtedly an NRL caliber player, but his availability has really been a weakness is not the right term, Craig, because that would imply it's not something he's been working on. But the bad luck has been there, hasn't it? And with his contract up, would the Parramatta Eels retain him? Would it be a top 30 deal? Would it be a second-tier deal? Would he look to chase a top 30 deal somewhere? What do you think about young Richard Penasini and where his future lies as far as an Eels is concerned?
When you're talking about that availability, as you always do, John, unfortunately, Richie has copped a pretty raw deal with injuries because he missed all of 24, the entire season.
ACL alongside.
He missed a huge chunk. Yep, he missed a huge chunk of 25, and then this year he has barely been able to appear on the field, and that's not going to happen now until round 17. He looked so good in his return game the other week.
That's he is an NRL caliber player. He really is. Anyone that has watched him play when he's healthy, he has all the tools to be able to play the NRL and be a gun there. But my goodness, has he had some miserable luck.
Here's how I would see. This is just my take on where I think the Eels would go with this. If the Eels wanted to retain him, I don't think they're going to offer him a top 30 deal, because you can't afford to have the injury risk that unfortunately Richie's going to carry with him. There's going to be people being guarded against signing him. So I would think if the Eels would like to keep him, that it might be as a development contract. And that way he's supported full time, but they're not using a top 30 spot there. That's if the Eels, that's the way I think they will go if they want to keep him in their system. I don't think either party would want a second tier deal, like a train and trial scenario, because I'm sure Richie would see himself as being better than that. And I don't know the club that would go down the path of saying to him, look, you can stay train and trial if you want. I just can't see. I can't see them doing that, because I think there's an element with that if he's been a top 30 player, I just don't think I don't think either party would get to that. Will another club offer him something? I think there might be a chance that someone like Perth might take a risk on him. And if I was to put money on it, I reckon he will take a punt on a contract elsewhere. That's just off the top of my head in answer to a direct question about where things leave him at the moment.
And in a similar vein, Butcherbird's got a question for us in regards to Junior Barlow and his contract situation. He says he's 32 now. Do you think he wants to play for another 3 years? And then, but obviously the Eels have been trying to hammer out an extension with Junior in some capacity, Craig. That's been in the press for a while now. Nothing official, obviously. But Junior's form, I think, in totality, it's been pretty good this year. He's been playing through some injuries pretty clearly. There was a knock to the knee that the coach referenced in a post-match presser that was clearly hampering him for a good period. But he's also churned out some, one back-the-clock efforts. Even last week, it was 150 metres, a game-saving field goal deflection. That really it was, as I led with my weekend wrap, it was a steely hand and a gilded boot that won the Eels that game, among other things. But Junior's hand and Mitch's boot, the two old boys combining there.
Two captains. The
two captains, exactly, the two leaders. What is the framework for, both for the Eels side and Junior side? 1 year extension with maybe looking at just 1 year deals from here on out? 2 years? I don't think you can sign for 3 years. Unless it's club controlled in the last 2 years, option. I don't think you can, as much as I love Junes, and he is going to go down as a Parramatta great, I don't think you can sign for 3 years.
I think 1 year is a sensible option for both parties, because it keeps the focus there. It's not like either party is going to be looking, like you sign a 3 year deal now, and it becomes like, the player might be looking, going, I've got to go around for another 3 years. Will the body be up to it by that third year? You're signing just for 1 year, and if both parties are happy going a year at a time, I think there's a lot to be gained from that. And I think Junior's got a role there in a bit of mentoring with the younger players, but he's also one of the genuine bigger bodies that are there at the club. And I think for at least next year, we're going to need that, because the younger players that are coming through, they won't be able to play regular first grade. that quickly. There'll be players that will start to make their debuts. Maybe Big T might get, if he doesn't get a debut this year, he might get a debut next year. Maybe someone like Ryder as well might get a look in next year. A year or two down the track after that, someone like Stephen Nunn as well. I think Junior is needed in that interim of being the player that can guide them while they're there. He's done a good job with Sam Tuivasa as well.
And, Sam ostensibly is Junior's replacement in terms of you might see that inversion of their roles sooner rather than later where Sam will take over the starting mantle and Junior, who's shown he can be very effective off the bench, reduces his minutes, focuses on a bit more impact. But, yeah, like I said, Junior, you talk to anyone around the club, and obviously in our chats with Mark O'Neill in the last couple of years, our end-of-season debriefs, he's mentioned Junior's the importance that he holds as a leader on and off the field. Obviously, Mitch has the C next to his name primarily as a captain, but Junior occupies a huge mantle of leadership for the squad. In particular, the importance of connecting the Pacifica boys and helping guide them through all the different trials that are going to be there as a young footballer and staying focused for football. He's huge in that regard.
And you look at the younger players that are coming through in the middle forward position, and you're talking about a lot of Pacifica boys there as well. So he's had his own journey. He can talk to them about the highs, the lows that they're likely to encounter. And he's just a Parramatta person through and through. So look, for mine, a year. Keep going year to year, and I think that works for both parties. Any other questions, or are we at the point of wrapping up here, John?
I think we'll start wrapping up, guys. Been another awesome chat with everyone. Obviously, gone over 2 hours.
Shout out to... We had I had some people come up and say good day at training today. So Stephen, I think it was John that was there as well. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Said the podcast got them up there to check out the cafe, the Paradise Cafe. So looking forward to everyone that comes up there and says good day at training. I really appreciate that. Just as John and I appreciate in all the other situations where people come up and introduce themselves, be it at the club, at the game, at lower grades, junior reps. Really enjoy being able to meet all of our listeners and talk footy. And I think Stephen was mighty impressed with the facilities that are there, that people are able to watch in comfort, watching the boys go around on the training track. And it's a great cafe there. So I'll give them a bit of a plug, the Paradise Cafe up there. Great food, great coffee, great service, and wonderful facilities. So, John, thank you to everyone that's watched this live. Thank you to everyone who watches or listens on delay. We appreciate you doing that. If you give a like and subscribe, that's always a bit of a bonus. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. Thank you, John. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels, Para proud.